Okay. So next up we have Attila Farkas, Director of FHIR Strategy and Interoperability from Canada Health Infoway, to talk about some of the tools and resources that Canada Health Infoway is making available to help us with our adoption with FHIR in Canada.
And I just thought that I'm stepping up here to help him with the audio video. Okay, thank you, Kevin.
I just have to step up for a call.
Yeah, thank you. So let me see if I can actually duplicate this screen, because I decided that I'm not going to bore you with slides. Instead, we're going to grab a browser window and we're going to go to work with it. We're going to look at some of the tooling that exists. And let's see if that works. That does not seem to work, so maybe I'll try in that case to just the extend, and this is going to be a little bit harder, but I'm going to put the browser onto the big screen. So let's see. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so pardon me for having to turn around from you for the purposes of the presentation, but what is it that we're going to present? We only have almost half an hour, maybe 20, 25 minutes. So there's no way that I can do a proper presentation in-depth presentation for any of the tools that I'm going to show you. But what I want you to take away when you go home is that there's a whole wealth of tools that are available to you in order to get engaged, learn about FHIR, get involved, develop, and share with FHIR, including some very hands-on programmatic capabilities. Before we get going, may I get a show of hands of how many of you are actually doing software development and are interested in FHIR from that perspective? Okay, so there's a few of you for sure. Probably most of them are at the code camp. So I'm hoping that they're also observing this thing over there. I will start by saying that it was about 16 months ago that we got started placing some more fundamental sharing solutions in place in the space for people to get together and start collaborating on FHIR. And the reason that worked was because we already had the so-called Info Central. I don't know if you're familiar with the platform. Canada Health Infoway. Let me just log in, because then we're going to get access to all the resources that there are. So Canada Health Infoway has invested in this platform about 3-4 years ago, and the idea was that it was trying to bring together various stakeholders from all over the industry, all over care settings, to get in the know, to be aware of what's going on around the country and be able to collaborate. And the concept was that we were creating these communities and also working groups. Sorry, it's a little bit backwards. So these working groups were communities were focused on generic domains of interest where a lot of future work would be discussed and developed, whereas working groups were particularly focused on resolving actual problems in a particular field. So the FHIR Implementers Working Group got established about 16 months ago. Gavin and Yaron are co-chairs, and Michael from Ontario IMD are co-chairs of this working group. And the interest that we saw right away from the community was to get started on addressing some fundamental needs, as in, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to collaborate? Where is it that we can find some information that's relevant to everybody? How can we tell the world what is the business case for FHIR? To look at some of the solution architecture work and so on. So what you see on the landing page of the working group is all these streams that we have started working on, and on the right side you see a couple of links, and those links are actually taking you to work that has happened and deliverables that have been created and are currently present online. So I'm going to open up a different tab here because I wanted to show you one of the places where we're keeping a lot of the content that's being developed through the working group. We call it InfoScribe. It is our Canada Health Infoway's official standard release center. And it is part of the standard selection framework that I think Jeroen mentioned in his previous presentation. In the standard section, you will see that there's all the usual health IT standards that are active in Canada. They're listed there. And one of the new ones is HL7 FHIR. So navigating to that page, you are actually going to find work that has come out from the working stream. And you would have probably arrived to exactly the same place if I came here and I said, okay, let's look at, I don't know, the business case or at some smart on fire type work. But I wanted you to see how do you navigate if you want to find, you can look for InfoScribe and then taking the standards route, you're going to arrive here. So as you can see, one of the first work items was to look at the business case. This is already 12 months old work. And then give some context, an executive overview, the strengths, challenges, best practices that you should absorb, then look at the stakeholder perspective. And one of the things that was very important from the very get-go is that we wanted to make sure that we start looking at the FHIR environment, as in what type of operations one needs to have and capabilities in terms of tooling in order for this ecosystem to properly thrive. So I will magnify this for a second, because from the very get-go, we identified that there's going to be a need to have a focus on area of modeling. We thought at the time that you probably would need a repository where you store whatever you modeled, and then you somehow have to build this thing. For those that have been involved with FHIR from the early days, they know that there used to be a build, I mean, still is, but that was the only way that you could actually get to something properly rendered. And so we had to pay attention to how do you build a FHIR specification. And then we were thinking about stepping into the future early on and try to look at how would you expose this to the outside world. So publishing and discovering services, but with an eye towards already contemplating conformance testing and integration. And then branching even further to trying to create ready-made deliverables, that those deliverables would be actually practical for software developers to pick up. So if you look at the entire spectrum, what you see is that we try to give it some thought. How do you get from the idea phase and modeling something all the way to giving a software developer an application package? So I'm glad to say that we have come a long way in the 16 months. So going back for a second. I think I lost my mouse there for a sec. There you go. So one of the biggest things that we have done was actually the introduction of Simplifier. So you have heard Simplifier being mentioned several times in several presentations today. What this is the result of some amazing work that's coming out from the Netherlands. The same team that is working on developing the FHIR specification has also a development branch that is building software that is able to keep up with the standard, interpret it, and create all sorts of cool deliverables. So this one in particular, and I will jump out from here for just a second just to show you, this is actually part of the one instance that exists around the world. And every single country, every color green that you see there, is a country that has FHIR specification that exists currently in Simplifier. And Canada is one of them. So now we have an official stand on Simplifier. You are able to go in and do searches. If you want to find a US core, for example, you can go there and find US core. But if you want to see what type of projects are happening in Canada, this is the list of projects that we managed to set up in the last 12 months. And as you can probably appreciate, it's really, really hard to put all stakeholders at the table and have a proper conversations to start growing a project in an online fashion, especially now that you're coming out from the old ages where everything was behind closed doors. So doing collaborative authoring in the public realm is something new. And I'm very encouraged to see that some of the projects that are currently being tested at the Code Camp are projects that have been born on this platform and are still being collaborated upon on this platform. So I will open up, for example, the Canadian e-referral. Canadian e-referral is the service that appeared on one of the slides. CareDove has spearheaded this initiative and jumped right into creating profiles and discussing workflows and so on. And it was just a perfect match. Canada Health Infoway was doing an investigation as to what would be the best tool for the country to author and then store profiles and specifications, and they just arrived at the conclusion that they need something where more than one person can come and collaborate on this. So then that's when the project was born, and I'm glad to say that if you look, for example, in the guide section, you can actually see some of the early work that they have created in the collaborative fashion through the platform and shared. So some of the work is just phenomenal. They're actually having they're using the platform to list here the FHIR Node Code Camp use cases that they're going to try. So for example, this one is being tested right now, and it gives developer the instructions that they need. This thing is accessible to them online all the time. Canada Health Infoway is picking up the tab for the whole country so that you don't have to worry about procurement processes in your jurisdictional organizations, which is usually a big burden because it's hard to convince executives that something this cutting edge and so new is probably the best tool for you. So we're trying to pave that way. So this is one of the tools that I wanted to highlight today. It comes hand in hand with another tool that I will try to start up here. I don't know if you've ever seen Forge. Forge is the profile editor that creates the FHIR profiles, can create the FHIR profiles that can then be uploaded automatically here. I will launch it on here. There you go. So this is a free download. The editor is absolutely free from FHIR. They used to be called Furore, so if you run into that name, it's not a confusion, it's the same company. You can create a new profile, you edit it in here, and then from here you can immediately connect to your project on Simplifier and upload it there if you really want to. What's really cool about this, however, and I'm going to show you that through a different project that we have set up here, is we've created a sandbox practice project for pretty much anybody that joins the Canadian FHIR registry and they want to learn a little bit about this. They can go there and they can actually practice. And what we have here is a Github integration where you're able to actually show that you do not have to necessarily work in this environment. You can still work in the comfort of your own home or enterprise. Do the editing that you want, be private if you want to, and then manage your versions in GitHub. And what Simplifier is able to do is then to synchronize the content that you have in your GitHub repository and bring it into Simplifier. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the work that's been going on with regards to the URI registry. Igor Serkovich from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care in Ontario has spent some significant time in trying to author this spreadsheet. This one you have probably seen. This is tremendous amount of sweat and tears to collect the UIDs, the OIDs, sorry, the URIs and the OIDs that represent provincial assets that needs to be standardized, Up until this moment, there was no service such as this in Canada to, for example, be able to find what is the ID for, I don't know, driver's license in Ontario, or what is the health card number in Manitoba, or First Nation designation for certain terms. And so about a year ago, we have started this as part of the FHIR Implementers Working Group as a stream, part of the solution architecture. And Igor volunteered. As you can see, this is the only tab that's publicly available but locked, that volunteered to reach out to all provinces and try to collect as much as we can. And then whatever was collected was placed in this spreadsheet. So this sort of became the source of truth. But imagine now that you're a software developer and you receive some sort of an information package and it has an OID. You have no idea what that OID is. So where would you even go to find it? It's really confusing. Well, the good news now is that we started this project for the URI registry. We created a profile for it, and consensus in the group was that the naming system, FHIR resource, is the best way to describe a package where you have multiple identifiers for the same concept. So this FHIR profile was created using Forge. It's placed in the project in Simplifier in the Canadian FHIR registry. We're just about to do a public review of it. You can see the elements in the FHIR profile that have changed from the resource as it is part of STU3. And then this template was after that used to create instance data, going one level up, doing all the instance data for the 50 concepts that are already in that spreadsheet. So now what you end up having is every single one of those becomes a FHIR object that you can easily download if you go to the Simplifier. But this still requires a user interface, right? So we thought that between two requirements that we used to have, one was we wanted to make this as easy and as simple to implementers as possible, and the second one, which is more of a governance of information matter, and also sort of a where is my data? Where does my data live? A number of Canadian jurisdictions have expressed concern that if they upload stuff into Simplifier, that's leaving Canadian soil. So we kind of lose control over what's going on with it. And that is recognized. Simplifier does offer capabilities to download your entire project as JSON or XML. But we also started a new program at Infoway, and when we were talking about how to encode some of the URIs for these OIDs or URI, the canonical URI, we were lobbying for having alternate names, because you can have alternate IDs, and then you can have the preferred one. So we lobbied to make this thing stand out and stand alone. Because this way, Infoway has the ability to stand up a service that can automatically query the Simplifier database for the Canadian FHIR registry, download all the projects that are there, including their FHIR data, and then offer it up in a RESTful way. So this is very, very new work. We literally finished one of the first incarnations of it yesterday, so it's that new. But what you're seeing here is something similar to the Terminology Gateway for those folks that have actually seen the Terminology Gateway, which is also offering support with health IT integrations in this field, where if I press the projects here, these are the Canadian projects that you have seen just in the Simplifier platform right now, right? So you can come here and now you have the guarantee that their data is not lost somewhere in space, and if I don't know, Simplifier were to be sold or taken over or crashes, disaster recovery is absolutely possible because we now have the data on Canadian soil. And then going to it, it will throw you back here. But what you can also do is you can use the RESTful services that this platform supports. So for example, you can issue a call such as that, and you can do this from a RESTful client for wherever you want. And this will actually bring back that OID number right there. So if during the development process you run into an OID and you have no idea what this is, you can just very easily call this RESTful service and it's going to tell you what this is. It's going to return you the entire thing and you'll be able to read through it. So you're already a little bit ahead. Yeah, so this is very, very new service. We intend to extend it even more. And some of you may remember last year I was trying to, let me see if I can see it here. I'm not entirely sure that it's there. Oh yeah, there you go. Last year we wanted to tease you a little bit with something really cool. And this was the something really cool, but you only saw it on a slide. Now think for a moment, everything that I just told you so far, that you authored your stuff, you uploaded it to Simplifier. Simplifier keeps it and presents it beautifully. You can do specifications, implementation guides, you name it. The Infoway service brings it back home and starts processing it now. So let's assume that for a second that your project has a capability statement, which every single FHIR implementation has to have in order to be compliant. But the moment you have a capability statement, we can do stuff like this. We can actually read your capability statement and render the entire specification into a RESTful interface for you that is not just for show. This is not just pretty colors. You can actually interact with the system and retrieve information that you want. I'm not going to do this one because it says that an ID is required, but we could do something that is a little bit more generic. So for example, one that does not have an ID that's required, I can see what type of information may be necessary in order for me to interact with this, and then I can just do the call. And the call actually goes out to a FHIR server that sits in the back, and what it does for you, it returns anything that's found there. In this particular case, we have a little bit of test data there, so you can actually see that this is the FHIR object that was returned, the success number 200. So what this enables developers to do is they can go to one single place and start learning about every single interface for all the projects that are in the Canadian registry. So suddenly it places you, without talking to anybody, in the driving seat. You are able to start thinking about creative ways of interfacing with future products. They're still being developed, they're not running in the field, but now you already have a leg up because now you know what's coming. So we believe that doing integration of this kind will accelerate adoption, and when combined with future test and certification programs, you can actually get to a self-serving environment where you really can do 99% of your work in the comfort of your home. And now you have a product, you can go to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care and say, oh, I think I'm ready to connect to your immunization repository, and I have capabilities for that, because I just did this entire stack and I'm comfortable with it. So imagine how much faster and how much less bureaucracy will it be needed in order to get a product to integration points. So these are some of the things that I wanted to show you. Terminology Gateway, this is an old offering. It's very relevant still because in the space of FHIR, you deal with coded system, value sets, and the like all the time. You see here all the releases that we are having on a regular basis, be that the Canadian LOINC or SNOMED CT Canadian extension. You even have the entire package for Prescribe It. And at the bottom here, you can actually see the RESTful APIs for it. You can interact with these ones in the same way that you got used to from there, or you can do it for the FHIR terminology services, and then you'll be able to use FHIR calls to pick up the code system value sets, whatnot. So let me see how am I doing. We have about 7 minutes left. I think I'll stop here and see if you have questions, because I think that would be more interesting. I either put everybody to sleep, or just shocked everybody, like, seriously, what is this? White pages with barely any scripting on it. I know. Anyway, I think the message I would like to leave you with, if any of this or all of this is new to you, that means you have a lot of catch up to do. And I think the best advice I would have is it costs you nothing. Come to Info Central, so that first site that I showed you, and sign up for free. You can then go and navigate to every single community that you care about. And obviously what we care about here is FHIR Implementers Working Group. You can just choose it from there. You come there, you can join for free. You don't need to talk to anybody. And you will see every single time that we have events, you will see them in the event calendar. You click on them, you just go in and basically participate. You don't need to talk if you're shy or you feel that it's overwhelming at first, but you're starting to learn about what's going on in the field. And I think that's very, very important to keep communication lines open. And then once that happens, and you become more comfortable, you will find all the tools that I have shown you are also present in the solutions section here, and a lot more than that. This is where you would find the terminology service, the Canadian FHIR registry, and so on, with a little bit of explanation for everything. So you will see what you need to know about it. We will have future integrations with the ticketing system that's currently running for collecting change requests for SNOMED and LOINC. We hope that if we were to set something up similarly for URIs, for example, then it will become a trusted source, because now you know that somebody is vetting these things. People don't just go in and put a URI because they thought that this is cool. So you can reliably go to this service. You're writing an application, you receive the code, you don't know what it is. You can call a RESTful call to the service. It's going to return you some information. You can put it up in front of the patient to say, oh, this is an Ontario driver's license. So, yeah. Okay, well, this was it for the tooling from Infoway. I hope it was of some value to you folks. I'm hoping that being that this thing is recorded, we'll be able to put it in front of the CodeCamp people later on too. So thank you very much for your attention. I think we're going to break now, right? I think, no? Oh, David is coming, perfect.
Question from Derek.
Okay.
Derek, go for it.
Attila, I'm sorry that I missed the first couple of minutes of this. I think I caught most of it. There's a lot of curation that Infoway is doing about all of the various projects, and the use of Simplifier and a national license that lets us all use Simplifier is very valuable. Where are the places where, aside from curating all of the things that are going on, what is the process do you see going forward where there will be the equivalent that we used to have of balloting to say, all right, let's reach agreement, let's find our consensus around how we're going to all use the same profile in Canada so that we enjoy that interoperability that we need. Where do you see Infoway's role in that?
So, thank you very much, first of all, for the question, because I meant to talk about it and I missed it. Let me see if I can bring this up. So there's a number of angles on that. It depends on what standard you're talking about. The focus for FHIR being today on FHIR, obviously, of the talk today being on FHIR, was that we thought about it a little bit and we realized that there's going to be consensus building for sure, and especially for those that have been part of the work that's been going on in the implementers working group know that Smart on FHIR, we did a lot of work on it, and the natural conclusion was, okay, this is working and it can be done, but the best way to do it would be if we had a common baseline. So the next big item, I think, that's naturally needed for Canada is to create the Canadian national baseline, FHIR baseline. We've been thinking about it for a while, but we thought, you know what, if we start at the beginning of summer and start talking about the general requirements and then start profiling this thing, we may be able to catch the gravy train with V4 coming out, version 4 of FHIR, that's going to have normative additions, and then why not do basically the first baseline on version 4? And then you're not going to have to touch it for probably a very long time. So the thought is there already, and a part of that we started thinking about what type of governance do you have around this and how are we going to act. So one of the easiest thing, and anything that I'm telling you now is not been decided yet, but some of the thoughts are more advanced. So one of the cool things about Simplifier is that it allows you to track issues. So for example, if you were to take, for example, the Canadian e-referral project, right, because it's in advanced stages, if you wanted to go ahead and give it a test as to how ready are you, you could very easily use the issues feature here, where everybody, you could actually turn the project on, the issues on in such a way that the entire community sees it, or just project members see it. And then you can invite the entire community, for example, to do a review. You can put a news announcements in the landing page of Simplifier to say, between such and such date, such and such project is open for public review, and all the profiles are going to be there. The profiles are there. It's probably the best rendering you ever see anywhere. People can go in, look at them, and leave your notes. So you're basically self-serving and you're positioning everything in the public realm. And I think if we agree that all this is done in good faith, then in the end you will probably have a little bit of a time allocated to dispositioning of those issues. And the moment you disposition the issues, well, it's basically balloted. So that would be the idea. So I think we should try it out with some of the smaller projects, see how it works, and try to trend towards something that is visible, obvious, transparent, but not very top-heavy when it comes to governance, because we've tried it in the past and it's extremely expensive, very slow process, and you lose people along the way. I think the main focus of balloting is to get consensus and to have clarity of a recommendation that this thing is what you would propose to go forward with. So this is the thought currently. We're probably going to start with the URI Canadian registry, because all the work that Igor collected and put it there, we would like to make sure that we proofread it. One thing I didn't mention, even the workflow, you have the ability to set custom workflow in Simplifier if you have an enterprise account. And you can go through these phases. You see, you can go from authoring, which is right now, into review and then published. And then that is going to be the clarity that you need to drive the mechanism, hopefully. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? I think we're right at time, so David.